Es geht weiter auf der Deep Dive Stage hier bei den Online Marketing Rockstars. Ja, und wir haben die letzten Tage sehr, sehr viel über steigende Kundenbedürfnisse und über Daten geredet. Alle sagen immer, kennt eure Kunden, kennt sie in- und auswendig, kennt sie besser, als sie sich selbst kennen. Aber das ist natürlich eine große Herausforderung. Steigende Kundenbedürfnisse auf der einen Seite, steigende Daten, immer neue Kanäle, immer neue Vertriebsmechanismen. Wie soll man das managen, fragt man sich da oft. Und da haben ein paar schlaue Leute aus den USA sich überlegt, man müsste eigentlich Plattformen schaffen, sogenannte Customer Data Platforms. Und noch ein paar noch schlauere Leute haben dann sogar ein Institut dazu gegründet, das sogenannte Customer Data Platform Institute, von dem jetzt ein Speaker hier ist. Er kommt aus Philadelphia ursprünglich. So I switch to English now to have a very warm welcome for David Raab from the Customer Data Platform Institute. David, great to have you here, finally in Hamburg.
Thank you.
You just told me you've been to Amsterdam and
Yes.
London, so we're proud to have you here as well.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
Glad to be here.
This is your stage.
Oh, that looks familiar.
There's your presentation. The
Yes.
clock is going down
Where's the
from now. Have fun.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Glad to be here. I will tell you a story. So we all love stories. Once upon a time, there was a land with no Facebook, no Instagram, no Snapchat, no YouTube. It was a peaceful land. This land had no smartphones. It was even more peaceful. People had to watch speakers at conferences. This land had no Wi-Fi. This land had no internet. This land had no personal computers. This was a very different land. But it was this land. It was simply this land 30 years ago. The other thing this land 30 years ago did not have is problems with customer data, because there was no customer data 30 years ago. If you were lucky, you had a list of names and addresses, possibly the date they purchased last. Maybe that was on one of the big computers that were behind glass. But we had none of the technology that we have today. And it was okay, because we didn't have any data to do with that technology. Come ahead 30 years, and we're now in this world of hyper change, where we have all those things. We have Facebook and internet and smartphones, and we have customers who use those. They rely on them. They build their lives around them, really. And they expect us as marketers to use them in the ways that the customers want them to be used. They really expect two things from us. They expect that we will give them personalized treatment, because they know we could. They know Amazon does. They assume that we can. And that personalized treatment relies on great data. Now, the problem is that in those 30 years, the technology has gotten better and better and better of the consumer. The technology of the marketer has lagged far, far behind. So customers have great data. Marketers don't necessarily have such great data, and the gap gets wider and wider and wider every year. So right now we have a situation where very few companies have good customer data. We can look at research, and most surveys, if you ask, do you have all the customer data and all the systems the way you want them to be to do everything you need? And 10, 15% of the world will say, yeah, we got what we need, don't bother me. The rest of the world, not so much, right? Things in Europe, little behind, maybe North America. Sometimes when I talk to Europeans, they say they're way behind. They're not way behind, but perhaps a little behind. So a little less integrated, a little less usage of cloud, and a lot of the modern marketing technologies rely on cloud systems. A little less organizational integration between, say, the email department and the media buying department, sharing or collaborating on technology. So a little more diverse. The IT departments in Europe, according to this slide, a little less oriented towards solving business problems and a little more traditional in terms of I'm in the IT department and my job is to keep the computers running and to have good data security and to make sure the checks go out on time, but don't talk to me about this marketing stuff. It's not my problem. The only place that we see the Europeans, consistently ahead of the North Americans is in GDPR, for obvious reasons. Right now, GDPR is obviously very much on everyone's mind. I certainly hope it is on everyone's mind here. the US, even though, of course, we all know that it applies to data about European persons, many people in the US think it doesn't apply to them, and they'll find out otherwise whenever they find out about it. So we have this gap. We have this growing and increasingly dangerous, painful gap between what the customers are providing us in terms of data, the data that's available to from customers, data we can gather, and between what the customers think we're doing with the data, because they think we're personalizing, and if we don't personalize properly, they just think it's because we don't care about them or because we're lazy, which is not really the case. You as marketers know it's really hard, but the customer doesn't know it's really hard. They think it's, oh, just install another app on my iPhone. Why doesn't the marketers just do that? So what we have then is we have this thing called CDP. CDP to the rescue. CDP will close the gap between marketing technology and marketing expectations. And that's all dandy, and the only question now, well, what is a CDP, right? What is this magical solution that you're peddling, and will it grow hair on a billiard ball, and so on? Well, it will not grow hair on a billiard ball, does not cure our baldness, but it does solve some problems. The definition of a CDP, and I invented the term CDP, we run the CDP, and so I get to define it. It's one of the privileges of inventing a term, is you get to define what it means. And according to the CDP Institute, a CDP is a marketer-driven system that creates persistent unified customer database accessible to other systems. Okay, nothing really more to say. I guess I'm done, right? They know that. What does that mean? Well, okay, fair question. This is the kindergarten drawing of what a CDP is, but it's a good place to start. We have all of our source systems over on that side. That's where all that customer data that's coming out of the smartphones and the Facebooks, if you get any from them, and other places is coming in. It's all stored in this one big place, big barrel full of data. And now it's shared out to all your delivery systems, email, website, call center, and so on. So at the very, very simplest label, the CDP is that central database that takes all your customer data and makes it available to all your systems. And if you think about that, just even for a second, as marketers, most of you would really like something like this. One of the interesting things about CDPs, it's really easy to explain. I've been a marketing technology analyst for many, many years, and most concepts in marketing are pretty hard to explain. This is the simplest marketing technology concept to explain ever, which is a good thing. So, but what's inside that red barrel, right? Because that red barrel didn't tell you too much. Well, what does a CDP have to do to be a CDP? You have to be able to load data from all those source systems, and that's not easy, because the source systems are different. Some are structured, some are unstructured, some change all the time, some new ones pop up, some old ones go away. So you need a lot of sophisticated technology just to get the data in the system and to store it. You need some processing capabilities in the middle. You need to take the data and standardize it so that the products labels from the website are the same as the product labels from the retail store, because they're often separate systems and they're not consistent. You have to have the addresses standardized so they're actually usable. A lot of things like that, extract things from your unstructured data to make it, again, usable. Then you have to link identities, extremely important, because we're talking about customer data here. This is all about building a single view of the customer where the data from the website and from the email and from the retail store and from the call center and from the mobile devices all comes together, so I can see all the information about the customer in one place, so I can build that complete picture so I know what to do with it, so I can personalize their treatment properly. Very important function, again, not trivial. Then once I have it all indicated, I need to be able to do things with it. I need to look for trends, calculate lifetime value, do the kinds of things that I would do that I can only do after I've brought together all this data about the customers. And then, now that I have this beautiful customer data that's all clean and organized and properly enhanced, now I have to expose it and make it available to all those other systems that might use it, either for business intelligence or for personalization or for recommendations or whatever, customer service. This is really not just about marketing. This also includes things like customer support, customer success. And all the systems that are going to use it, all those delivery systems, they want it in the way they want it, in their own format. They don't necessarily have the capability to read it in whatever the standard form is that the CDP wants. So you might have to reformat it again, put it in a flat file, put it in a database, send it over in a batch, whatever you need to do to make it usable to those systems. So there's a lot of very complicated processing and technology involved in this in what looks like a very simple process. And of course, that's why we have the CDP vendors doing this stuff. Now, in addition to the core CDP functionalities, this is what a CDP does. If you don't do this, you're not a CDP. Many of the CDP vendors do more. Many of them have analytical capabilities, which at the simplest means I can create a list, do a selection or a segmentation. Other more complicated analytical functions, but the core one is just segmentation. And some of them can manage engagement, which means picking messages. Okay, again, we have much fancier definitions, but at the end of the day, analysis is about building a list. Engagement is about selecting what message goes to what person on that list. Most of them do not take the next step and actually send the message. So they don't have an email delivery system. They're not a web content manager. They don't have their own mobile app. They just connect to those systems. But if they go to the engagement side, then at least they might tell those systems what's the right message. So again, that's the broader scope of what you'll see CDP vendors do. So now we have a little better idea. We can go back to that original definition and kind of enhance it a little bit. It'll make more sense at this point. So marketer-driven, remember that was the first definition. What that really means is that it's packaged software. Because of all the complexity, all those complex functions we just talked about, you really don't want to ask your IT department to build this for you. That's what we used to do. We used to say, oh, IT department, go build me a data warehouse or a data lake and put all my customer data in place. And the IT department would say, yes, I'll be happy to do that for you because that's my job. And a year goes by, and 2 years goes by, and 3 years goes by, and maybe they give you something, and maybe they don't give you something, and maybe what they give you does what you need, and more likely it does not. Because IT departments don't really know how to work with customer data. Most of them. So having packaged software to do that, and this is what's new. When I named CDP in 2013, there were no packaged software systems that built marketing databases. That's what's new about CDP, is it's packaged software to do that. Just didn't exist before. And being packaged, it's lower cost, less risk. It's the difference between buying a word processor and trying to create your own word processor. Much easier if you do it yourself, if you buy it, rather. Unified persistent customer database. Again, unified gets data from all sources, builds that complete customer view. It's organized for data management. Computer systems are built to do something. And usually it's one thing that they do, and they do it well. So a CRM system is really good at having a customer record come up on the screen, and you can see that individual customer, and the call center person or the sales agent can take notes about that one person. That's what they do. They're very good at it. It's not the same as building a customer database. Data management platforms are very good at collecting audiences and making them available for advertising. That's what they're built for. You design that system a certain way to do that very well. And DMPs in particular deal with very large masses very, very quickly. You build a system a certain way to do that, not the way you build a system if you want to store all the detail about a customer and make that accessible for analysis. Just a different way in building. So this is designed, it's optimized for that one particular thing. It's persistent. We talked earlier about persistence because I want to do something like trends or history. If I don't store the data physically somewhere, persist it, I can't look at trends because I don't have the old data. I just look at the current view. I could go out and look at your record in your accounting system right now, and I could say, okay, this is your address. Well, if your address changed 2 months ago, your system might not even have the old address because it doesn't need it to send you a bill today. So it doesn't say often don't keep it. So we need to have some place to store that data so we can look at what's changed over time. That's persistence. And then accessible, making it easy to share data with all the other systems, which is really important because if you don't share data with all the other systems, then each system is responsible for storing its own data. So my email system tries to build a complete customer history, and my web personalization builds a complete customer history, and my call center builds a complete customer history, and I have several dozens possibly of complete customer histories stored, and it's a lot of work to maintain them all. And of course, they're all going to be a little different. Many of them will be limited in the view of the data. So being able to share is really important. The other very important thing about being able to share the data is now when I go out and I look for an email system, I don't have to worry about how good a job it does at storing customer history in the email system. Because there may be an email system that's really great at sending emails and writing emails, but it doesn't do a very good job with customer data, with storing customer history. So if I have to rely on that system to store the customer history, maybe I can't buy the best email system because I have to have one that has a good customer history function, and I have to compromise on something else. Well, if I don't have to worry about the customer history in the email system because I'm storing it outside in my CDP, now I can just buy the email system that's really good at email. And it makes it easier. I get a better system. I probably pay less money. And also, when I want to change email systems, I don't have to worry about getting the old data out of the old email system, which can be very difficult, because I'm not relying on that. I have this separate database over here of my customer data. So the CDP opens up a lot of possibilities. It makes a lot of things easier by this ability to share data. Here's a more formal look at how the different systems vary from each other. Again, the same characteristics of the definition: packaged, unified, persistent, open, maybe analytics, and we lay out a little how they differ. Then data warehouses are not packaged, they're custom built. By and large, your DMP really doesn't store all the unified customer data. It just stores a very small subset of it, usually doesn't persist it, throws it away after 90 days. So DMPs are often confused with CDPs. Used to be the most common question we got. It's gotten a little less common now. Basically, they're complementary. They work together. DMP is just another delivery system, just like your email system or your call center or your web CMS. It's just a way to get messages out. It's not really intended to store your complete customer history. And CDPs and DMPs often work together. They're often integrated, they're complementary, there's no conflict between them. Then we have data hubs, tag managers, a company like MuleSoft. Some of you know was just bought for $6.5 billion by Salesforce earlier this week. Systems like that, they move data from one system to another, but they don't store it. They don't persist the data by and large. And most of them don't do a very good job of building those customer identities, which is a very complicated process. Marketing automation systems, CRM systems, we all discussed a little again, don't really store a full customer profile. They pretty much store the data that was generated by themselves. They're not really designed to ingest data from external sources. Most of them don't do a very good job with matching either. And by and large, they're designed to kind of use their own outputs. They're not really designed to share data with other systems, similarly marketing clouds, journey orchestration engines, generally not designed. They may build a database, but they're not designed to share that database with other systems. They're really designed to use it for themselves. So a lot of overlap between these different things, but definitely not the same thing. OK, great. Well, now we know what it is. Now the question is, well, that's nice. What do we do with that? And there are use cases and use cases and use cases. Once you get past the DMP question, once somebody understands what a CDP does, they get excited. You're all excited, I can tell. I just know you're excited. But then you have to convince your boss, who maybe didn't hear the speeches, didn't get quite so excited. And he says, well, OK, yeah, unified data, that sounds nice. But what are we going to do with that? And more to the point, how is it going to earn a decent return on investment? So now you have to go into, I'm going to use specifically what I'll do with it. And the short answer is lots and lots of different things. You have to find the particular application that works for your business. But this is just a list of things, whether it's just data capture or identifying customers with churn or looking at the customer journey stage. It goes on and on. We don't have time to really go through them all or any of them. But trust me, there are a lot of things you have to figure out which one makes sense for you. So that sounds great, and really it sounds a little too great. As I said before, are we selling snake oil here? It really does sound like something that's too good to be true. Fair question. Absolutely fair question. And the best answer that I can give you is to explain why it's true. Okay. What's changed since before 2013 that suddenly makes these things possible? Why are there packaged software to build marketing databases when there wasn't 10 years ago? That's the real question, because that's what CDPs are. So why do CDPs exist now? Well, they work, first of all, because they are package systems, so they have pre-built components, so all the technology that was needed to build a CDP had been developed over the previous 20 years or so all the matching and all the data ingestion and so on. So now it was well enough known that someone could combine them and standardize them and not have to build them custom each time. Some of the more modern big data technology, things like Hadoop and AWS Cloud and all that, makes it a lot easier and quicker to manage different kinds of data, higher volumes of data, get quicker response to the data. So all the things you need to do just really became a lot easier than back in the day when you were running an Oracle or a DB2 or a SQL Server type database. Again, it's designed to do this. Wasn't really much demand 10 years ago. Remember our little imaginary world where there was no data? Well, until there was no data, you didn't need a CDP because there was no data to put in CDP. So it's really only the last 20 years or so there would have even been a demand, a reason for a company to build one of these things. And again, the vendors are specialists. Your IT people, wonderful people. One of the big objections, oh, we could build that. Our IT people are just as smart as anybody else. I'm sure they are just as smart and charming and probably even better looking. But if they're not customer data experts, they're going to start from scratch. It's like me trying to go out and even chop down a tree. Could I chop down a tree? Yeah. Can a tree surgeon do it better and quicker? Yeah, because he knows how to chop down a tree or she. I would kind of hit and miss. And if you hit the wrong thing when a tree falls, you're in trouble because it hit your house. Well, if you have a failure with your customer database, you also have something that's very painful. So now you're all convinced. Now you know how to convince your boss. The only question is, where do I sign? Well, I don't sell these things, so I can't sell you one. The CDP Institute is a consortium funded by the vendors that our mission is simply to explain this to the world, to market development in more technical terms, just so people know they exist, because most people don't know they exist. All right, how many of you who are A, listening, B, actually had heard of CDP before right now? Okay, a couple. I see a hand, but I think you might be a coworker. All right, so we're just in very early days of explaining that CDPs exist. Again, easy concept to understand. Most people get very excited, once they hear it. Oh, there's the time. I just found the timer. I'm 6 minutes over. I do apologize. We're done. Okay, so really quick then. How do you select this thing? Well, start with a self-assessment. Start with understanding what it is that you need. What will work in your organization, basically? What people skills do you have? What kind of cooperation across